I mean, everything kind of stems from like having a mental breakdown in like 2013. And so we'll skip all that and get to the van part and then move around. It's just, it is what it is, right? So the end result of everything was that I quit my job at Walmart. I had been there 13 and a half years. And so my ex had moved, she had moved down outside of Little Rock. And so I went down to stay with her and our son. And I was like, they have an auto auction down there. So I bought this minivan. Here's the thing, it's like the mistake that I made from a van life perspective was that I never took the time to set it up with like levels and a nice bed. Like I had a mattress in it and I had stuff, but I did not optimize my space in any way. I mean, I wasn't really in a great state of mind. I was just like reactive in doing things. But I didn't work for months, like the entire summer, and it was great. So in 2015, I quit at the end of April and like didn't go back to work. And then I didn't go to work until the end of October, and maybe it was like early November. And so it was cool. It was cool. I like got to drive and I'd just be like going down the road and I'd be like, yo, let me go this way. That looks cool. And I'd end up in like some national forest in Colorado, you know, and like, it was great. There's this whole like freedom of just going, I don't know where I'm going to go exactly. I'm just going to see where the road leads. Because I mean, really, ultimately, I think that most of the time we're just post hoc rationalizing the road being where we wanted it to go. And the truth is we just had to follow the fucker end up somewhere. And then we're like, oh shit, like this is what I'm doing now. All right, this is totally what I meant to be doing, you know? So, but it's cool. I had dreams, like some of the medicine that they were giving me was like antipsychotics and things. It gave me really heavy dreams, and I'd have dreams of driving, and you know, I'd have dreams of going and seeing things or doing things and seeing a place. And like legit over that summer, I had probably 30 things that like reminded. I'm not saying it was foretold or anything. Our mind finds patterns, but there were a whole bunch of things that I was like that really convinced me that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and so it worked out.
So. What was it that led up to that? Because you mentioned mental breakdown.
In 2013, like at the end of 2012, I started like, I had a rough job. I was married and we didn't get along very well. She had a lot of like, she's just kind of, my wife was real hard to get along with. So that... Like, later therapy showed me like narcissistic abuse and things like this that I dealt with, you know, and there's a whole subplot of like males being the victims of domestic violence, which people don't really talk about, you know. And it also like there's a theory that like I guess that it degrades your manliness. But like, dude, what am I going to do? She's fucking like 5'4" and 100 pounds. I literally can't. It would have been unmanly of me to do anything back, you know. So everything kind of crescendoed in the summer of 2013, and I had spent time in a mental institution, Springwoods Behavioral Center down in Fayetteville, and they diagnosed me with borderline personality disorder, major depressive disorder, and like all the anxiety and stuff that goes along with that. Because for a while, like even before all of this, I had been having chest pains for over a year, and I got my heart looked at, and they're like, "You're fine. You probably just have anxiety." So I ended up trying to hang myself in the garage. And so I literally, like, I mean, I did it and I woke up from it with a thing around my neck. I don't want to go into, like, in case anybody hears it, like, there's things that I did wrong along the process, right? And it's cool. I'm fine because at least I'm alive. But I was immediately, like, back in the place for another week. And then I took 3 months LOA and my relationship kept deteriorating. And I realized that like my wife at the time was a big problem for me, and she didn't like it either, and so we split up, and I kept going through therapy like this. So here's the thing is like, I recognize a lot of people have mental illnesses, and the truth is because of having to learn about myself, I recognize that like almost everybody I see has recognizable mental illnesses. There's recognizable things, and the rebuttal, of course, and the way that I was raised is super Christian, and the rebuttal was always that like, oh, they're just making that stuff up. It's normal to be this way. It's not normal to be that way. Like the way that I was raised was not normal. My parents were not normal. I'm not normal. And like a lot of my personal journey has been coming to the acceptance of who I am, because the truth is like,
Yeah.
I am what I am. I went through the experiences that I went through. They shaped me.
Mm-hmm.
I got tired of being like, really the underlying subplot of everything was that I didn't like who I was ever. I never liked who I was. Whether it was because I was told that like you had to basically be perfect to get into heaven, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like if you have any experience with really strict religious upbringings, but it's not good.
Yeah.
And it gave me a lot of trauma about myself. My dad was occasionally physically, well, I mean, you know, Southern boys, you get beat. Like, this is how it is. Like, I don't know where you grew up at Mississippi and Texas and stuff. Like, they just beat your ass. That's just it.
Yeah.
And of course, a lot of mean words and things. And so it left me where that I didn't like who I was. And a lot of that is permanent in as much as I will always have physiological responses to anxiety. I will always get an elevated heart rate. I will always feel tension in my chest. But now I know what that is, and I can like mitigate it.
How do you respond to that?
Breathing exercises, like, and it's not even rigorous. I have like a friend that's like, you breathe in for this many seconds and you hold it for this many, but he's like a real meticulous dude. Like, I'm a free spirit. Like, my game is like, I'm just going to take deep breaths until it alleviates the chest pain, because again, it's the physical and the mental are all tied together. And so what is happening is I get uncomfortable. It makes my body tense up. It physically makes my chest tighter, which makes it harder to breathe, which then this whole feedback cycle. And so the Buddhists talk a lot about mindfulness. Like, you practice mindfulness in yoga and in all these kinds of other like new agey Eastern shit that like integrated into our stuff, right? Cool. But all it really is paying attention to your body and being honest about what's going on with your body.
Being self-aware.
Yeah. And I would like to think that I'm a pretty self-aware dude. I definitely question just about everything that I say and do and think. I also recognize confirmation and other biases are at play. I honestly have no idea how I come across to other people. I can only judge myself based on the reflection that I get from people.
Yeah.
And I aim for a good reflection.
Yeah.
So
how do you feel about yourself now?
Well, I'll be honest. I like who I am. I have to say that. On this journey thing, like, dude, I went out and I went to a mountain and I was a ski bum for a couple of seasons. And in the middle, I worked at a beach hotel in Washington. Like, so I ended up in Oregon on Mount Hood. If you ever see a picture of Portland, there's a mountain in the background. That's Mama Hood. I interacted with thousands of people, and they were all mirrors to me of various fashions. So I guess the moral of the story is, because I'm a very empirical dude, like, I have to analyze things, and that's part of the anxiety, and I recognize that, and sometimes I catch myself and it's like, you're totally overanalyzing, dude. But there's no substitute for direct feedback. And it's not the words people say, it's the look on their face when you're talking to them. Do they even come talk to you? You know, like, sometimes it is the words that they say. Like, I had a number of people tell me that that I was their favorite employee or their favorite coworker or whatever. And when I left, people cried, you know, like, dudes cried, like, not all sobbing and stuff, but, you know, like, it was heartfelt shit. But basically, I found out that other people liked me, so why didn't I? And not only a few other people. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to go travel, was because I had been at Walmart ever since I graduated college, and I knew a lot of people, and I know a lot of people there like me and I like them, but I needed to be like, who am I? And I had to go, like, it's so cliche, but go find myself. And I did, and I know why I'm here, and I know that, like, I know good things about myself, and I know bad things about myself too, and, you know, there's a lot of, I guess, acceptance that you just got to do. Yeah. And work on things.
When you were institutionalized, what was that day like? How did you wind up there?
So, yeah, I was in the hospital 4 times. I never went to an actual hospital. I just went straight to the mental hospital. And the first time was because I had been seeing a therapist, and I had been on antidepressants for years by then. And I went to the doctor, and my wife at the time went with me. And this is what I will say is, like, for all her faults, she kept me alive. She absolutely did. Like, I'm here today because she made sure that I got help. She couldn't do it herself, and that is what it is. So I went in for an extended weekend in like April or whatever, and that's when they diagnosed me. But I guess like none of us realized how bad it was, and then I attempted suicide on a Sunday in the afternoon. I told her about it that evening, and the next day I was in the hospital. So that was a week, and then she made sure, like, she worked with my manager and got me all LOA'd at the time. And when I got out, I was in with a therapist that was really good for me, and did dialectic behavioral therapy and eye movement.
How did you feel about being institutionalized?
Man, it is what it is, bro. Like, it hurts. People watch movies about that stuff. Like,
yeah.
I've told people, like, one of my buddies, like, legit started work the same day as me. Like, we started work the same day. We played music together over the years and stuff. And I came through here on one of my trips. Like, before I settled out west, I traveled back and forth a few times. And so I was visiting with him and his wife, and I was at their wedding, you know? And so I watched her, like, physically recoil at the table when I was talking. And I'm like, I was only a danger to myself.
Yeah.
Whatever. Even in those moments, I've thought about it. I had fun. People liked me. And again, like, let me clarify. I don't care if people like me. I'm not in the game to be liked. What I'm really in the game for is to be loved. I'll be perfectly honest with you. And I feel the only way I can do that is that I'm real. Like, and that's something I had to learn about myself too, because I'd ask people, like, why, what's going on here? You know, and the biggest explanation that I got back was, like, I'm real, and there's with you, what you see is what you get, and I'm going to be the same with you, and I'm going to be the same with anybody that I meet.
That's good. Have you always been like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, so this is like good and bad, right? Like I said, my upbringing was really weird, but at the same time, being able to moving every couple years meant that I had to learn how to integrate. My sister's choice was basically to just withdraw, and she just stayed by herself. But I made friends everywhere I went. And so maybe I'm more aware of it. I also recognize that a lot of the techniques are manipulative. My dad taught me how to be a pastor, and a lot of the stuff that you do as a minister is 100% manipulation.
Yeah.
Now, so where I struggle is, and two, having walked the road that I have, like, there are things that I have come across about life that I understand that normal people simply don't. And so sometimes it is perhaps helpful to manipulate other people into doing what's right for themselves.
Yeah.
But that's a whole ethical issue too.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
Well, I feel that I'm in the world to share. I gather knowledge. I process it. I want to write books. I want to be a public speaker. I want to go on other people's YouTube channels and talk about my stuff and sell my books and things like that. Like, I've really thought about this. I mean, I was raised to be a minister, and I don't believe in Christianity anymore, but the desire to find and, like, share truths is still in my heart.
Going back to your relationship, were there any red flags early on
with my ex-wife?
That you maybe ignored but shouldn't have?
Oh yeah, there was a lot. So, I mean, I don't want to be disparaging, right, in the mother of my child. Even early on, I recognized that it was not positive. And the truth is, too, is because of the way that I was raised, it was very much like my parents never taught me anything about dating or about how to have a relationship. And because we moved so much, I never had, like, an older brother type mentor to teach me. My sister didn't know any better than I did. So when you grow up in this sheltered environment, what ends up happening is you have no knowledge, no way to get your needs met, like no way to, like, talk to somebody that you're even interested in. I didn't even know if it was okay. Like, I thought it was wrong to be interested in somebody, you know? So that set me up, and interestingly enough, it set my sister up. She did the exact same thing. And my mom also, with my dad, did the exact same thing, which is to be in a position to be weak to the wrong type of person. The type of person that can push past your emotional boundaries, because really all this comes to, like, not just the lack of knowledge, the ignorance about relationships, but a very closed, like, holy crap, you want, like, in my space emotionally, and I'm not used to that.
Yeah.
I made mistakes. I said rude things, you know. I told her that I would do half the chores when she paid half the bills, for instance, as she's sitting pregnant at the table. That was not cool. You know, there's other small things. There's other things I regret. I would say, like, if you add it up, the stuff she did was worse to me. But, like, even then, I recognize where she came from, too. I recognize her path.
Yeah.
You know? And so... yeah, there were red flags, but I didn't know any better. And the truth is like, I was 24 and I kind of made the decision. I was like, man, I've got to get moving on life. I need to start putting myself out there. And so I lowered all my boundary. I let it happen, right? I was 100% complicit. I just didn't know where it was going to take me.
Did you feel any sort of obligation to get married? Because it sounds like you felt a lot of pressure.
Yeah, we got married when she was like 7.5, 8 months pregnant. I mean, it was, I felt that I had to do it. I mean, and so what's interesting is that now I'm in a relationship with somebody who has a bunch of green flags. But because the first time, it's not that I'm judging the new one because the old one didn't work out. I want to go into this one 100% like I'm cool with where this is going, because I felt like I had to make this one work.
Yeah.
And so now I look at it and I go, I think that this is going to work, but I need to be in a place that I'm really happy to do this. I don't want to do this one out of obligation.
Yeah.
And you know what? Like, I did the right thing, man. I tried to raise this kid for years. Like, he was 8 when we got divorced. That's really pretty good. I got a decade out of that. That's really good. Her previous relationships did not last anywhere near that long. But the funny thing is because I had none, like, of course mine didn't either. So,
yeah,
you know, I was probably destined to not go well. There's no way I could have avoided it with what I knew at the time.
Okay.
And so when I was driving through the like mountains, like I seriously, like I thought about all of this stuff, and I listened to Taylor Swift 1989 for like 3 months, which, you know, judge me if you want, but she writes a great breakup album. What can I say? You have to look at something and say, I could only have done differently if I knew differently. And the only way that I would have known differently was for a whole bunch of other things to be different. So you can't point in time and be like, well, what would you change? Well, I mean, go back in time and tell my younger self something? I don't know. Like,
yeah.
So, again, the road, it's all continuous. You can't really just pick a point and expect it to be different.
Yeah.
As part of my whole experience, I had to basically get rid of everything I couldn't prove. Because all of the stuff that I was taught basically didn't actually come true in life, you know? So I had to, like, if I couldn't prove it, and there's 2 things that I decided to accept. Number one is that, and I can't prove these. Number one is that there is some sort of being that communicates, some sort of being out there. And number 2 is that it communicates with me.
Okay.
And that I'm actually a pantheist, which means that I believe that the universe itself is God. And by God, of course, that's a whole conversation because it's a word. But in the Judeo-Christian, it means like literally a dude on the throne watching and judging and making stuff happen. I would say that my version of God is more of like an architectural kind of big giant computer and so I am a program and I need to execute to the best of my abilities. And of course, this is all because I'm a computer dude, right?
Yeah.
But I guess like you could say my desired outcome is that I do a good enough job at whatever I was supposed to do, that whatever it is out there likes me. Because if you think about it, why would a God take everybody to heaven? It's stupid. Like, I'm sorry, like 95% of the people don't really add value. Like, you don't go to a zoo and see cows. You go to a zoo and see like, yo, there's an ostrich. That's pretty dope. Hey, there's a giraffe. I don't have those everywhere I drive around town. I can drive around town and see cows, you know? So I guess like the moral of the story there would be like, if a God were actually making a collection of beings that it would be beings that it liked, which means that you have to stand out for some reason, you know?
Yeah.
So my goals, and of course this all goes in with the type of person that I was brought up to be, but my goals are to like be very much, I did my best to find out what was right and do it. And then it's not that I'm trying to cover my bases. Whatever made me needs to be happy with what it made. And if I make it happy, maybe it picks me to hang out. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. Maybe I just did what I felt was right, and I can die knowing that.
Yeah. How do you decide what would make that God happy?
A lot of it is feelings based. But because of the very religious environment I was brought up in, and again, to reiterate how much I personally believed it, I practiced a lot on hearing the inner voice, right? Yeah. So I don't think that someone else could easily replicate what I'm doing, which is why it's so hard to codify it. And like, that's why it won't be a religion. I'm not trying for that, you know? So I'm aware of various biases. Of course, the strongest one is confirmation bias. And that is normally what makes prayer work. I only remember the times a prayer came true, and I don't remember the like 500 times more that they didn't come true.
Yeah.
But I have a number of like really interesting things that happened that tell me that I'm on the right path.
Okay.
And I'm very confident that what I've seen will happen. Very confident that at some point I'm going to stand up in an arena and talk to people.
Okay.
But that's because I guess you could describe it as luck. I don't know. All my life I've been lucky, like weird, random, like even in the worst of times, like luck will happen to me. So.
Sounds like your time living out of a van helped you appreciate yourself more. Is that true?
Yeah, it's really enlivening. I gotta say, like, there's this whole, for one thing, I definitely had moments that I was like, yo, this is way better than living in an abusive relationship. So for that alone, It had its moments.
Well, most things are.
I mean, honestly, right. But because, of course, before you live in the van, you have to get rid of all your stuff, which means that I had no mental things holding me back physically. Like, it was literally, everything was right there. I've never lived in snow. Dog, like, this is wild. I mean, it would snow like hip deep overnight sometimes, you know? And man, it's so cool though, to when you have this moment of overcoming and not just one moment, but like a compilation of these moments. And what could happen to me, like, I would definitely be sad if I lost what I have. Don't get me wrong. But I know I'd make it.
Yeah.
And it gave me a lot of strength, and I guess that's your question, is like, I gained a tremendous amount of self-respect, frankly, to be able to survive in a completely strange environment. I went from working in a cubicle in an air-conditioned office and driving 10 minutes to go home every day to driving across country and living out of a van and finding my way onto a mountain after I decided to become a ski bum. And I mean, like, I just made things happen. And I think it's Ben Franklin and I'll paraphrase the quote, but it's something to the effect of, a man has no greater fortune than to be thrown on his own skills to survive, because you find so much more depth than you ever knew that you had.
Yeah.
And I now have access to some of that.
Yeah. Stephen Hawking said something along the lines of, you never know how strong you are until you have no other choice.
Right? And like, I vacillate between how much empathy I have for other people. And the reason is because, like, your boy struck out and did work. Like, I recognized that my situation was, the reason, like, when I left, I knew that I was going to kill myself. Like, it was going to happen. My plan was to buy a shotgun and have it in my bed until I was comfortable enough to use it. Because I'm not a gun person. But I knew that I needed something that was going to be like really effective. And the shotgun to the lower, like that's 99 point something percent. You're getting it, you know? So I knew that I had no choice. I had no choice. And I watched other people, like I have a buddy that went through a divorce at the same time, and his mental state was better, but like his resolution was he slept with like 30 women. And then guess what? He's married to a woman that had 4 kids plus his. And so like he grumps, you know, he's not happy. I know other dudes that did similar things, or I see so many people that remarry real quick within a year or two, and it's like you learn nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think some people try to replace what they lost rather than learn from their experience.
And you're dead on. You're dead on. And, you know, on the one hand, I'm jealous that those people didn't fall as far as I did. I fell so far I had no choice but to strike out. But on the other hand, like, aside from the pain, I'm strong, like, and I can handle business, and people don't mess with me. Like, I don't know. I think I look a little bit crazy these days, so it is what it is. I take this back to my religious upbringing, but pain is actually purifying. Like, there's a whole thing with that, you know? So for me, and I think that has helped me in my outlook too, is it's almost Zen Buddhism, like to an extent that you just, the pain is what it is. Like, you just look past it. Mm-hmm. You're aware that it's there, but you got other stuff to do. Yeah. So for me, it proves things, right? And I also want a few haters on the way. I want people that tell me I can't do, I'll tell them like, yeah, I want to be this. And they'll be like, you can't do that. You want to know how many people I've proven wrong in the past 3 years? It's great. I mean, I'm one level below where I was. And the only reason that I'm not more is because the pandemic thing hit. But I still got a raise this year that was substantial. I got a double-digit raise because I'm a baller and my vice president and I are close. So, and here's the thing too, is everyone except for one person on this journey the second time is new. It's not like I called up, I purposely didn't call up people that I knew, you know, because I wanted to prove it. Yeah. But now I'm a baller and whatever, I can do it. Yeah. I would prefer not to. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm happy to be comfortable, and I want to keep the climb going. I don't want to do it again. Yeah. But yeah.
It sounds like you love a challenge.
Yeah, I do. So this probably goes back to being a smart person, and there's a whole thing with intelligence of having to prove it constantly, which I've learned not to do because that makes you a big jerk face, you know. But I realized early on, like, I was my own best competition. Mm-hmm. And so I guess there's not really, recognizing the challenge, like, there's not much difference in an intellectual competition with yourself. Like, how many math problems can I do in 5 minutes versus this? Mm-hmm. You know, it's all proving yourself. And how else do you gain wisdom, though? You can't just suddenly be wise either. And probably the most influential character for me out of the Old Testament was Samuel. He picked wisdom over riches. And because of the wisdom, he, of course, gained riches and a lot of respect and everything. And like as a 12-year-old, when we were literally in Mexico, I remember reading the scripture and I was like, it struck a chord in me. But the question is, do I want to be wise, or was I made to want to be wise? Right?
So what happened with your son during the divorce?
That's really the hard one. They moved, of course, it took him, right? Moved down to Little Rock. And so I went from seeing him every week, every other weekend, and one day a week, to seeing him every couple weeks. And I had to drive to go get him, and it basically burned up the entire Friday or Saturday and Sunday. Like, it ruined the whole experience. And I mean, I was so depressed and suicidal that's a couple months later, excuse me, is when I hit the road. And I will say that not seeing him was the hardest thing. And what's even worse is, like, they decided to move out to Washington, and I helped them move, but then I came back here. But see, her and I tried to live together. She threw me out, which she's thrown me out of every house we've ever lived in. And I'm not that hard to get along with, you know? And so that's why I lived in a van on the mountain, was because I literally had nowhere else to live. And I mean, and I had no place to get a decent job. And I had tried in this little BS town that they moved to get a job, and there was nothing there. I talked to him 3 times a week. We video conference sometimes. I saw him. We went camping in July. So it's kind of a mixed bag, because the boy has cried way more tears than I wanted. And frankly, so have I. There's a whole thing too with, like, you go from having a family one day to being completely 100% alone the next day. What do you do then? Like, you know, I wasn't getting my hugs when I came home, you know, like, and so, and of course, I mean, how many hugs have I missed out on? How many little moments? And my son's almost as tall as me now.
What is the dynamic like between the 3 of you now?
I mean, it's okay. It's a little weird. I think he and I have an understanding. We're cool. Like, we take adventures. I take him skiing every year. We're probably not going to go this year because of the Ronas.
Yeah.
I have worked really hard. Like, one of the things that neither of my parents, and my father passed away a few years ago. My mom's still around, but to this day, they still can't look past their mental construct of the world and actually engage with reality. And that's why, like, I'm so much about acceptance, because I saw what lacking acceptance of the world and oneself does. So we have real honest conversations, and I'm like, dude,
that's good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've had to, like, my parents were married and they divorced several years after. In fact, they divorced like when my son was born, like the next year. And so my parents were together my entire upbringing. It was a very classical upbringing, right? But look at how messed up I am out of it. So I am fully aware that even if you live in the same house, that's no guarantee that you're going to have a decent relationship.
Yeah.
And because of the own conflict I have with my own parents, like, when it's my time to go, I want to say goodbye to my kid. And I want him to want to say goodbye to me. No conflict.
Yeah.
So I approached it like that. And I've been like, look, dude, you have every right to be angry with me, and I'm real sorry, and shit's wild, and that's what it is, and that's not enough, and you know, I'm not good enough. And he's the one person that can judge me. I'll say that. Like, fuck everybody else. Like, I don't owe you nothing. I made him. And I missed him. He was my buddy. Like, we'd hang out and go do stuff. And I can't even go take him to, like, get a milkshake or a burger, you know? And so, like, honestly, like, I cry about that, like, a couple times a week. And it's better because it used to be multiple times a day. And, you know, I look in and like, why did I not move back? Like, what way? And there's all kinds of dynamics there too, but... So here's a fun story about why I'm here and why I feel the way that I do about what I'm supposed to be about. He and I were camping last year out at Beaver Lake, Horseshoe Bend specifically. And there was an E. coli outbreak in the lake, and so you couldn't go swimming. And we're like literally like from here to your parking lot, like, dude, like 50 feet, like, yo, there's the water, it's 100 degrees, can we, you know, but I don't want like to crap my guts out. Like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So I'm making dinner one evening, and we're talking. And I was like, look, man, I was having one of these conversations with him. I was like, look, dude, I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. And I can't shake that feeling. And then I was like, he's kind of like, do you know why? And I'm like, well, I think I know what I'm supposed to do, and I think that this is where I need to do it. And he's like, well, what are you supposed to do? And I was like, it's going to be stupid, but I want to write books. I want to talk. I want to help people. I want to show them the path. I don't want to walk it with nobody, but I want to be like, you go that way. That's the way. And no sooner was that out of my mouth than a reporter walked up and asked if she could interview me about the lake. And like the look on his face. And so confirmation comes in weird ways. And of course, one could say that I'm just pattern finding in the void, right? I'm looking for omens. But I have a number of stories like that. So either there's a legitimate being that's talking to me, or I have learned how to be super in tune with the environment around me. And I think it's that one. Because I can justify being, like, because there's, if you think about it, to use an antiquated term, there's Indian trackers, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's people that can look at the ground and see what went through it and track the animal or the person or whatever. Like, there's people that can, like, have elevated senses, and, like, there's all kinds of biophysical explanations that don't even involve supernatural anything. And so I just feel like I'm super in tune with where, and you know what? Maybe that's how I know is, there's a saying about counterfeit money, about telling real money from counterfeit money. You train a bag teller with real money, and they can instantly tell if a bill is fake just by the feel of it. So if you handle it, in other words, if you do something enough, you're going to recognize fake immediately. Mm-hmm. Because my whole game is trying to be balanced, I immediately know when I'm not balanced. And so I guess the question is am I actually only feeling my own balance, or am I actually feeling the environment? Is there a God that made a path, or am I just trying to walk a tightrope through nature? Either way, the action is the same.
Yeah. I
have to treat it the same.
So how often do you talk to your son?
Talked to him yesterday. And, so there's, like, he's 15, so of course he's gaming online with his homies all the time. Mm-hmm. And the past couple of times he and I have been on the phone. We actually chat on Discord because he's 15, right? So he'll be like, oh, my homies just came online. They're hitting me up for that voice chat. And I'll be like, dude, it's cool. You can go. He'll be like, no, let's talk for a few more minutes. So I'm doing something right.
A lot of father-son relationships can't talk about anything but football and the weather. So,
dude, exactly. My dad never talked to me about feelings. We talked about electronics or how to work on something or how to be a preacher. Like, we talked about things,
yeah,
concepts, but never, yeah. And so I recognized that was the biggest thing missing from my upbringing, and that I had no coping mechanisms because I had no way to understand my own feelings. And so instead of crash course learning about it out of desperation at 35, if I can I'm just trying to give this kid a base. Mm-hmm. And I'm very clear, like, dude, I'm not saying that this is legit. It's not 100% for sure. It's how I feel. I may be wrong.
Yeah.
But it feels right. What else can we do? If we're not guaranteed an afterlife, then the only way we live on is in the memories of the people we know. Or that know us, rather. Mm-hmm. I want people to know who I am. I don't want to go through this world and be complete unknown. I don't know, a little mystery is fun. Leave them wanting more, leave them wanting more. But, yeah, like, why not? Like, what? Am I so special that I'm the only one that's ever had these feelings? Like, come on now. So, yeah.